everyone. Welcome again to Indian Story Read Along. Today we're going to read an illustrated storybook called Aani and the Tree Huggers. This book is based on a true story about deforestation and a group of women in a village who had no power from the government. They had no weapons, or they had no army or anything, and they stopped a team of loggers from cutting down their forest. So this story is by Jeannine Atkins, and it's illustrated by Venantius Pinto. Aani and the Tree Huggers. Let's get started. Aani sat down the basket of brown nuts she'd been gathering and sat beneath her favorite tree. Every day, at least once, she leaned gratefully against its thick, rough trunk. Here, she had daydreams too large to fit in her family's crowded hut, where crying babies, her grandfather's complaints, and her sister's gossip drowned out the sounds of her own thinking. Aani crushed a red berry to make a red spot on her forehead like her mother's, a bindi or a pottu. She was weaving grass around her ankle like the silver bracelets married women wore when she heard rumbling and roaring. The sound was as angry as a tiger's growl. It was louder than the thunder that seemed like the stormy voice of the snow-capped mountains. Aani glanced at the Himalayas, but the noise was not coming from that snowy home of the spirits. As the grinding and gnashing grew louder, Aani sprang up. She knocked over her basket of nuts as she ran toward home. Her mother was not in their hut or in the yard. Her father and the other men were in a distant field, cutting stalks of rice. Aani ran to the river and found her mother filling a jug with water. "Mother, can you hear the noise?" Aani cried. Her mother put down the jug and listened. A woman behind her stopped whisking the sari she was washing through the water. Several women, some with babies bouncing on their backs, rushed toward them. Aani's mother looked past the smoke that curled between the tree trunks. "It's a truck," she told Aani, "a gigantic and swift cart." The other women had reached them. "It is as we heard from the forest runners," Kalavati said. Everyone turned to listen respectfully, since Kalavati was the oldest person in the village. "The men from the city have come to take the woods." Aani's mother frowned. "But the forest has always been here. Our people have always been here." "The men from the city will say that we don't own it. We don't have papers," Kalavati said. That's what they told them in the other village. The rumbling had stopped. Aani lifted the hem of her sari and ran toward the place that had just turned silent. She sped past the rice fields where the men carried sheaves of rice on their backs like golden capes. Aani's mother and the other women dropped their baskets and pots and hurried behind her. The silver bracelets on their wrists and ankles jangled. They stopped when they saw the truck. Several men swung axes. One held a tool with jagged and sharp steel teeth. "Namaste." Aani and the women put their hands together prayer-like and bowed their heads. The men continued to swing their silver axes at the bottoms of the small trees. The metal first broke the bark. The gashes grew wider. One man pushed a broken tree. It thudded to the ground. Aani's mother covered her mouth. "Stop!" Kalavati cried. A man pulled the chain of a saw. The grinding noise was shrill, but Kalavati spoke loudly. "The trees give us their fruits and berries." There she is in the middle there. Their wood provides our houses and our plows and hoes. The roots keep the land from sliding when the heavy winds and rain come off the mountains." The men continued to swing axes. The swaying and buckling branches let Aani see the wind, and the wind let her see spirits. A man with an axe seemed only to touch a tree and it crashed down. Kalavati ran toward this man. "Kalavati, stop!" the women called. Kalavati grabbed for the man's axe. The man pushed Kalavati and she tumbled. "Get out of the way!" yelled the man. "We use these branches for our fires," Kalavati said. "We need them to cook our food and warm our homes." Another man waved a piece of paper. "We've got orders." "Already you cut more than we cut in a year," Kalavati said. "Animals live among these trees. Where can they go?" Another man with an axe brushed past Kalavati. He walked by Aani's basket and nuts close to the tree that Aani sat beneath every day. Aani ran toward him. "Come back!" her mother called. Aani threw her arms around the tree. She pressed herself against it. The man and his axe were at her back. How easily that axe had pierced the bark! "Aani!" her mother screamed. Aani heard her fear, but she pressed herself closer to the tree, close, so that nothing came between them. The bark scraped her cheek. She didn't look until the sounds of the saws and swinging axes stopped. The wind wound around the trees so that the leaves softly whoo-hooed and hummed. And then she saw that all around her, women and children were hugging trees. The red tikas on the women's foreheads made bright spots in the forest. The men had put down their axes and were whispering. Then one of them said, "Please go home." "This is our home," said Kalavati. "We will give you 1,000 rupees just to leave," he replied. Aani thought about what 1,000 rupees might buy. A goat, so that they wouldn't have to carry kindling on their backs. It could buy new scythes for cutting rice and enough tea and sugar to last everyone for years. "No," Kalavati said. "We don't need 1,000 rupees. We need the trees." Once again, Aani and the women clasped their arms around the trees. Aani didn't move until she heard the rumble of the trucks, first loud, then fainter. Rustling leaves and rattling branches again filled the forest with their music. Aani dropped her arms from the tree. Namaste. Peace was what they wished for everyone who came and left. "What did you think you were doing?" Aani's mother asked. "I was so afraid." "I was afraid too," Aani said. Kalavati started dancing. Another woman bounced her baby. Overhead, birds flew from tree to tree. Someone began to chant. Aani looked up at the great range of mountains and whispered a prayer to the goddess mother of the world. The trees were safe now. Everyone was safe. The end. Did you notice something? There was not one dude who was in that entire group of people hugging the trees. It was a group of women, and it was just them and their kids. Isn't that incredible? They didn't have anything else, and they stopped these people from cutting down these trees. So I want to read this because this is based on a true story. This story is based on real events in northern India in the 1970s. The women, part of a movement known as the Chipko Andolan, Hug the Tree movement were victorious. Today, councils meet within most villages to decide how many trees can be cut without endangering the land and those who live there. And every spring, new trees are planted. I read this cool story about this woman that every time there is a girl born in their village, what she does is she plants another tree. And she has like 11,000 trees. This is an elderly Indian woman. And this is so important with deforestation. And as Kalavati said in the story, there's nowhere for the animals to go. It's not really that animals are being killed, it's because they die when they don't have another place to live without the forest. So this was Aani and the Tree Huggers. Again, it was written by Jeannine Atkins and illustrated by Venantius J. Pinto. No wonder this won an award, huh? It's a really good story. So if you like this, then please subscribe to our channel and we will see you again next time on Indian Story Read Along.